Women's, guess what? I've been tagged in a comic book community video. I'm Mike Spider Slayer. Welcome back to Comic Book Corner 2.0. You know, I haven't seen these things in a while, but we have a tag video today, which is going to be very special. The creator of this tag is Alex the Comic Hoarder. So go ahead and check out the channel. Also, I'm going to be tagging 3 other people to continue this chain, and hopefully it continues to spread in the comic book community. Stay tuned to the end of this video. Okay, so before we get started, I got a cool little story for you. Now, I did know that this video series existed before I even got tagged in it. Now, it's only been around about 10 days or so. I think I'm either the second or third group of people that got tagged, and I'm going to spread it like I said. The YouTuber that actually tagged me is Comic Books Galore. He's a subscriber to my channel. He just started a channel himself, so I highly suggest that you follow him, and he does great editing on his videos. Again, I'm going to leave the links of all these YouTubers in the comments below so you can check them out and have other people to watch besides me, but still watch me, right? All right. But the reason why I knew this tag video existed, and this is such a funny story, is that I am a subscriber to the channel Lunch Money Comics. Now, if you've never checked out that channel, I highly suggest that you do. He is a great guy, super passionate about comic books, and his story is awesome. He was a kid, he didn't have much money, so what he did was he saved, you know, some of his lunch money, and by the end of the week, he would compile like $1 or $2 so he could get 1 or 2 comics at the store. And he still kind of does that today, where he, you know, goes through thrift stores and all kinds of other places to get deals on comic books. Great guy, like I said. He did his personal top 5, and I would suggest you check out that channel. I give you a hint, one of his comic books that is in his top 5 are behind me right here. So great stuff there. Comic Books Galore, the guy that actually recommended this tag video for me to do, his story was really, really nice as well, how these books have such personal meanings to him, right? And I love that. And I don't want to spoil the video. I want you guys to go ahead and check it out. I'll leave you the link in the description box below on his channel as well. So these guys are great. They're trying to start their YouTube channels just like I did. So yes, that's all I have to say about that. Let's get started with mine now. Okay, so here we go. Here is my list. Now, my list is my top 5 personal key comic books, and this is something that has a personal meaning to me. I don't know if I'll ever sell these books, but it's part of the reason why I got into the hobby to begin with. And I'll go in actual order here. So my number 5 book here goes to Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles issue 5. I went digging for these books and I pulled them out. This is actually the reprint. Now, I have a funny story when it comes to this book. My friend, his name was Joe, and there was no other people that liked comic books, right? But Joe liked comic books. And he's like, man, I'm a huge fan of comic books. I like to draw. I'm like, I got comic books. And I did. I had comic books in this cabinet that I kept. I call them my childhood comics that I constantly just opened up, looked through, you know, didn't always read them, but they were always in my collection, and I still have them today. And it was probably about a stack about this high, and some of them were just Amazing Spider-Man comics, Star Wars comics, just a mishmash of books, right? They're beat to hell. And the great thing about Joe was he loved to draw, and when he drew, he's like, I like to draw these characters called the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. And I'm like, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles? I'm like, what the heck? What are these things, right? And he's like, yeah, no, man, this comic is great. It's like violence, and these guys got weapons, and the comic is black and white. I'm like, a comic that's black and white, right? And so when he, you know, opened up that artwork and he showed me this, I was like, what? I'm like, no way. I'm like, this is absolutely insane. That is crazy. And I thought it was so different. Like, I never saw anything like it before. And the thing is he knew about the Turtles really well. He knew that you couldn't get like first and second and third issues. He knew that they were in second print and third printings and stuff like that. And the cool thing is he gave me this issue 5 second printing of the Turtles. And so that really introduced me to like independent comics, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle comics, and just a good friend. And that book has dear significance for me, and obviously to the Turtles themselves today, as they were really a strong kicker of me following a series going forward. The funny thing is about that book, it's still in its original bag and board. I gotta change that out. Okay, so now we're gonna move on to number 4. And number 4 goes to the Web of Spider-Man issue 32. This is part of Kraven's Last Hunt. This is part 4, Resurrection. This is another book that I've had from my childhood. I absolutely love this book, mainly because of the cover. I mean, don't get me wrong, it's a great story, but when I was a kid, I bought this book because of the cover. I was like, whoa. At the time, I didn't know Spider-Man was wearing a black suit, so I'm like, why is he wearing a black suit? Did he die? He's coming up from the grave. I'm like, I want to read this book, or I want to know about this book. And the cool thing is that my parents, when I was younger, and I lived in South Florida, owned a restaurant. They were pretty successful at this restaurant. And every Sunday I would have to go and work with them. So I would like do the dishes, or I would help prep food with my dad because my dad was a chef. And then when the restaurant opened, there's a couple things I would do. Before football would come on, I would read comic books. And this was one of the comic books. But once 1 o'clock came on, I was watching the Dolphins. And this was like back in like 1987, guys. This is like when I was 12, right? So, but when I read this book, and I was like, oh my God, how dark is this comic? I could not believe it. I was like, whoa, Spider-Man is just so, you know, like menacing and evil looking. And I didn't really know what the story was. I just knew that I enjoyed it and I wanted to read more. And just how Peter was coming from this grave, I just really enjoyed it. And it had such an impact. And for the longest time, I went searching for the other parts of this story, and I found it, and I read the story in whole, and it became Kraven's Last Hunt. And it took me a while to actually buy the trade, but I did buy the trade and then read it again and again and again. But that was the book right there that really kicked off, you know, the storyline Kraven's Last Hunt for me, and really started, I guess, me enjoying Spider-Man, right? Because the next books I'm going to show you really kicked off Spider-Man, but this made Spider-Man more of that, oh, who is he? Like, I want to follow him a little bit more. So yeah, that book, really cool. Okay, the number 3 book is not really a comic, it's a trade. And I'll explain to you. And this goes to The Walking Dead Volume 1. Now, for quite a while, I was out of comic books, okay? Comic books in the 90s were like really bad. So obviously we know Marvel went bankrupt. I was a guy that followed Marvel, and I stopped collecting. Plus, life was in the way. I was young. I had to put my money in other places. And so I was focusing on my wife and kids and all kinds of other stuff. And as I got older and I've acquired more money, obviously, I wanted to get back into the hobby, and I wanted to make the switch from video games because video games took up so much time that I could play 3 hours and I'm not even scratching the surface of a video game, right? Plus my son takes over all the machines now, and so he plays them all the time and I just watch them. So when I got back into comics, I want to say it was like 2008. I probably took about a good 9-10 years off of comics, somewhere around there. And I started reading books once again, and Comic Central, the place I go to all the time that I always shout out on my hauls, Tyson, the shop owner, goes, you know what you should read? He goes, you should read The Walking Dead. He's like, you'll probably like it. And I'm like, no, man. I'm like, it's a zombie book. I'm like, I'm not really into zombies. I'm like, that's kind of boring. He's like, no. He's like, it's about the characters. And He's like, it's black and white. I'm like, I'm not really into black and white stuff. I mean, I like the turtles, but he's like, no, check it out. He's like, if you don't like it, he's like, you can bring it back and I'll give you a refund. I'm like, all right, fine. And let me tell you, when it came to the final page of this volume, right, I was hook, line, and sinker. Since I did not read comics all that much, right, and I was so used to like Marvel comics, goody two-shoe stuff, right, I never read a independent comic book that pushed the envelope like Walking Dead did. And I never realized how character-based this book was going to be. So when we got to the point when Shane was going crazy, right, and Carl shot Shane, and this is obviously a spoiler, but who doesn't know this by now? I mean, I'm sorry if I spoiled it for you, but when you saw this moment in this comic book, I'm like, holy cow, where is this series going? And the rest is history, man. I read every single issue from there. I think I collected the next 5 or 6 volumes, and then I collected the singles issues from there, which was like issue 50 and on. I started reading this book before the TV show came out, and when the TV show came out, I loved comparing the TV show to the comic book. And this was such a phenomenal book. So for the people out there that are now just reading this in the Walking Dead Deluxe, you know, like the kind of like the uncut version of the series, by the time you get to the end of it, Kirkman tells you all his initial thoughts and stuff. Congratulations, man. And you're reading it in color. You're in for some crazy shit that happens in that comic book. But this is so well done. One of my favorite independent comics, and really kicked off independent comics for me as a whole. Okay, so number 2, it's so hard, guys. I have so many books that mean something to me. And so number 2 is gonna be like, it's gonna be a tie, okay? Because at my comic shop when I was a kid, these 2 books were hanging up on the wall. And you know, when you were a kid, and this goes back to the discussion of the channel Lunch Money Comics, when you were a kid, you couldn't afford these comic books. Now, yes, they were only $1, and some of the higher priced ones, like first appearances and stuff like that, were like $5. But for us, that was a lot of money. And today's comics are a lot of money still, even for a younger audience, and I would say for adults too, because they keep jacking up the price. But these 2 books were on the wall at the comic shop, and I absolutely love them. And that goes to this one and this one right here. These were side by side, okay? This was $2.99 and $300. And I don't remember exactly how much, you know, my mind always tells me it was like something like $15. Maybe this one was $20. I don't even know. It wasn't even the point though. The thing is that the artwork on this blew my mind. I had no idea who did this artwork or who this artist was going to be, or if this was a first appearance or second. None of that stuff mattered to me. Again, I was a young kid and I love the artwork, and I love this because of all the 300s that were behind that crazy black Spider-Man pose going through the city. That was so cool. And then I was like, whoa, look at this book where we got this guy that has these freaking beams coming out of his freaking arms. I'm like, what is he doing? And look at Spider-Man trying to escape him. I'm like, oh my God. And I wanted both these comics so bad. And I could not get them for the longest time, right? Most recently, you saw this in a comic book haul video where I picked this up, right? And this is a childhood grail. But this one was even more. And I've had this book for quite a while now. To tell you the truth, I paid at the time $180 for this book. The great thing was about my store was they did payment plan for me. So whenever I would go to the shop every Wednesday, I would give them $5, $10, $15, $10, $5 until I paid off the $180 to own my childhood grail. This is an absolutely awesome book to have. I don't even care what it represents. It was just a badass cover at the time. So yes, so excited to have both of them. But man, just think of young Mike Spider Slayer at the time looking at that wall and be like, I want that, but I can't. There's no way I can get that much money. Such cool stuff, man. All right, guys, here's a little story for you. Now, you're probably wondering, holy cow, Mike, if Spider-Man 299 and 300 are not on that list, what is on that list? Well, I will give you a hint. It is a Todd McFarlane book. Now, let me tell you about the card shop, or the shop that I used to go to when I was a kid. I would used to ride my bike from my house to the baseball card store. It was actually called Baseball Cards Plus, okay? And before I collected comics, there was football cards, baseball cards, basketball cards. I collected all that stuff. And like, for me to collect baseball cards, yeah, I don't even like baseball, but this was the time when King Griffey Jr. was very popular, and they had that rookie card out there from Upper Deck, and everybody wanted it. So I was busy trying to score some of those. But comic books started taking off. And when I went to the shop, they had a spinner rack, okay, of comic books. And that spinner rack had this comic in there, and their spinner racks were different. It was like red and had a plexiglass in there, and you would pull that comic book out of it, and that's how you would get it. And that comic book was The Amazing Spider-Man, issue 313. I bought this because the cover was so insane. I was like, oh my God, who's this lizard guy that's just killing Spider-Man? I'm like, he's got blood everywhere and everything. And I had no idea that this was the same artist, right, that did this artwork with those two books that were hanging up on the wall. And all I knew was, listen, I love those books, but this book, oh my God, I almost dropped it. This book here is like $1. So for $1, I can buy this, right? And I have so much more money left over to buy other things. That was the mentality of my age, and my age at that time, not knowing value of comic books, because I just liked reading the stories. But this had such an impact on me because this really, truly introduced Todd McFarlane to me, right? And his beautiful artwork, and him introducing me to Spider-Man to a way I've never seen him before, with those dynamic poses and those spaghetti, webbing and all those other things like that. And then it wasn't until maybe about a year later, honestly, where I was able to buy monthly Spider-Man comic books, because I wound up getting allowance, right? But this is what really, truly kicked off Amazing Spider-Man for me, and then going to the shop every single week to pick up comic books. I mean, driving to that shop on my bike every week with my pocket change and all that other stuff, it was so much fun. And that's what I love about going to the comic book store. That's what I love about comics. And when I go searching for these comics or for these Spider-Man comics, it just brings me back to a much simpler time, and that's why I recommend that Lunch Money Comics channel, because it's just the passion of the hobby that keeps us going, right? There's all this negativity out there when it comes to the industry. When the industry crashes, it crashes, But until then, if there's stories that you like, or there's this comics that you like to collect, or if there's stories that's out there for you to read them, right? Just read them. Just enjoy the actual hobby, all right? So those are my top 5 personal comics. It was hard to select them, but I think that's a good top 5. Now, you're probably wondering, who am I going to tag, to keep this bad boy going, okay? So the first thing is going to be to my good friend Brant Fowler, who does the Comic Book Weekly live stream with me on my channel and Comic Book Weekly. He just started a YouTube channel himself. He's only got 93 subs, so I want you guys to check out his channel, subscribe to him. Great guy. He's got his own publishing company, Last Ember Press. He makes comics, so check it out. The link is in the description box below. Another great channel, a newer YouTuber who does a lot of YouTube shorts and does other long content as well, is Collecting with Dertz. He has 680 subs. I'm sure he'll give you some great comic books that mean something to him as well. And then last but not least, I'm gonna go to a big boy here. Now, I'm not gonna say I'm like personal buddies with this YouTuber, but we do talk on an occasion and we are acquaintances with each other. And we've known each other for a little while, but we've never done any projects with each other. And this is Mint Collectables. Obviously, a lot of you guys know him. He's the cream of the crop when it comes to the comic book YouTubers or just collectibles out there. He's got 153K subs. But I want to know, Jem, what are your 5 most personal keys out there? So hopefully he does it. Maybe I'll message him to make sure he does do it, right? All right, guys. So there you have it. Hopefully you enjoyed it. I know it's a little bit of a lengthy video, but I find that this goes a little bit deeper into the Slayer, and you understand my love for comics and for Spider-Man here, and kind of like, you know, why I always talk about Spider-Man. So there you guys have it. Hopefully you enjoyed it. If you love the content, I'm going to leave you more content right here. And of course, guys, as always, keep buying, keep collecting, and as I always say, read your comics. Guys, thank you so much. I'll see you real soon. Bye.